Okay, we just used padding to give ourselves some nice padding around the edge. As you can see in our card here, we've got 32 pixels of padding, giving us that nice breathing room. We're looking more professional now. One thing that we don't know is the edge. It's not really visible. Unless you look at this blue and white line here, you can see it. But border is the next part of box model. And it's so great because it shows us where elements begin and end very clearly. So let's go look at our cardboard box example again. So you can see inside this box, obviously the outside edge is extremely visible. It's like, yeah, this is the box. Very clear. It's not so clear in HTML and CSS until we write borders. So let's go check out the border with our box model overview pen. And again, you can find this in the resources outside of this video in the some extra help section. So I'm going to go over here. I'm going to say /*/. I'm going to type border just to leave ourselves a comment of what's next. Then border is interesting. We need 3 properties to really set this thing up. So first off, we got to say border-style, because borders can have multiple styles. I'm going to say solid. Then I'm going to say border-width, because we want to see how big the border is going to be. We'll do 10px at first. Now, I do want you to notice that 10px was added, but it's still a white background, so you can't really see it. So we got to do border-color, and we're going to do red. Now you can see between these 3, border style, border width, and border color, we can see all of those things working together. That wasn't so easy compared to just padding and width and height. But guess what? There is a shorthand version just called border. So border, colon, and then what we can do is we can type in solid 10px red, and then this will give us the same thing. So if I come over here and delete this, we'll now have everything that we had in one spot. But I think it's important for you to understand that all 3 of these properties have been popped into these border properties. And so oftentimes you'll see this in CSS where there's individual properties and then there's a shorthand version. So we're just going to focus on the shorthand version, but I want you to know like where it came from. So you're not like, what? How are those 3 things working? So the shorthand version is allowing us to have the style, the width, and the color in one spot. Now let's kind of look at this. You're going style. Well, solid. Okay, well, check this out. You can do dashed even. You could do double. There's a bunch of different things you can do. But ultimately, a lot of people usually just use solid when they're testing out their work. And I just said testing out their work. Here is like my biggest pro tip, maybe of the whole course, is this solid 1px red. So this thing allows you to outline any HTML element. For example, what if we took this line of code and we went back to our other page? I could put this on anything. I could say, well, what does my main look like? Well, there it is. Now I can see the element. That is so cool. What if I wanted it on card? There it is. What if I wanted just to see how big my H1 was? There it is. So it's so cool because now you can actually see the edges of the work. Like this is my biggest aha moment when I first started developing was border 1px solid red. So I'm going to come back here. And by the way, usually when I'm writing border, I'm doing it like this, 1px solid red. So as you can see, it still works. So you can interchange them, but this is the way that I prefer to write it. And I think you should too. Most people are going to be writing your borders like this. So we have our border 1px solid red. It's super helpful. But you might be going, okay, cool. We now know what the outside of the cardboard box looks like. Awesome. How is border helpful to us in terms of design? Well, there's a couple things that border is really helpful with. Number 1 is border radius. So border dash radius allows us to take the edges of those borders and actually turn them with radians. Now that sounds a little intimidating, but watch what happens. 20px, watch the edge of this box. This is where we start getting those rounded edges. So remember how I told you everything's a box? It is, but we can manipulate radians and we can actually turn this thing and bend it to our will, quite literally. So guess what? If we bent it all the way, 999 pixels, that's a new one. You can see that we're getting a circle because the radians are just going into each other. And that's right, we just created a circle in CSS. You can do this for all sorts of shapes by messing around with border radius and other CSS properties. But this is pretty cool. And this is how we're actually going to be using our image. So I'm going to go ahead and grab this border radius, 999 px, and I'm going to put it on our image tag. So join me in doing this. Jump over to your image tag, and we're going to put a border radius. And now we get that circle. So remember how in our final product, remember how we had that circle? Look at that. Pretty cool. And so in addition to our circle, we also want to get these rounded edges. See these on the card? So right now our card does not have rounded edges. It's just a rectangle. So what we can do is go to our card and we can type in border radius and we'll just do 20px. Let's just see what that looks like. Looks good. So 20px gives us that rounded edge that we're looking for over here. Notice that I didn't have to type border 1px, solid red, or anything because the border is always there. Just like in our box, there's always the edge of the box, no matter what. It's always going to be there. Same thing in our code. Our border is there and we can bend it without having to call out the border explicitly with like border 1px. So there we go. Now, of course, you can remove those border 1px solid reds. I always try to remove them after I'm done with my code, but they're so helpful when you're trying to figure out what the heck this is. So look at this. We're starting to get pretty close with just the box model. We've got some other tools still yet to come with margin in the box model and then some layout, but we're almost there. I mean, look at this. Congratulations. Okay, let's go on to the next module, margin.